Hey, possibility seekers, we're back. We've got a fun guest, another fun guest, because we always have to have fun guests. Her name is Michelle Scott. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Michelle Scott. She began her career in CRM in 1999, stepping out of her corporate marketing role. In 2013, Michelle branched out on her own and formed what she calls now Three Leaf CRM. Three Leaf CRM is an implementation company that does custom CRM solutions for companies ranging from 1 to 100 users, including national companies with sales teams across small local businesses. Michelle found out early on that her strength was sales. She relates her sales and marketing experience and passion to the sales teams for which she works with and for. CRM is the foundation that ties sales and marketing together, for those of you who don't know that. And Michelle helps businesses track, manage, and improve their sales processes. What most impressed me about Michelle was her intentionality around forming her business, when she did it, why she did it, how she did it. And we have a lot of things in common. So I wanted to kind of unpack what Michelle did, why she did it, and how we can have some takeaways. Hello, Michelle Scott, and welcome. It's a pleasure. Tell us. So, I just love hearing entrepreneurial journeys and mom journeys. So I wanted you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your journey as an entrepreneur.
So, yeah, and you gave a little bit of my background, which is great. I never pictured myself working, as an entrepreneur. I always thought I strived, whatever the right word is, to be, as so many of us do, I think, to be that integral cog that a business needed me. Like I wanted to be that employee that the business couldn't make it without me, which I did a really good job of for a while, right? And I think I hate to say that's a woman thing, but I think a lot of us women do seek that, right? We want to be needed. And it all came about. I got the rug pulled out from under me with a job that I really identified myself with. I got a layoff. Got the call from someone anyway, I was running the company. Our success, I felt like, was kind of on my back. Loved what I did. And I got that phone call. And it was the first time I felt really betrayed by what I set out to do in my career. And it felt like a week, but everything kind of came together, as is my fashion, in a couple of hours. I first called.
I'm sorry. Wait, let me put a pin in that. All right, did everybody catch that? You need to pay attention when she said, "Well, it was going to be a week, but really it was a couple of hours," and that's what we call an overachiever, don't we?
It was a couple of hours, between getting the phone call and coming up with my company name and registering the domain. It literally all kind of happened between, I want to say, like 9:30 in the morning when I got the phone call and like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I called my husband, and God love him. He's like, "Is everyone okay?" Because I was sobbing. I had never had this feeling in a career before. I always made the choice to leave and move on and step up. And this time it was, my legs were cut out from under me. And called my husband. He's like, "If everybody's okay, we'll be okay." And in my mind, I was going back to my corporate marketing roots. It's what I loved. And then I called a couple colleagues, other people that did CRM like what I do, and begged for jobs, basically. Are you looking to hire? Every single one of them said, "You've done this for multiple other CRM consultancies. Just do it for yourself." And yeah, then kind of sat down and thought about what would that look like. And, you mentioned the mom piece. My husband said he was on the CFO track, and he's like, "I can't stay home with kids sick. I can't take those days to do those things." That's part of what I love about the flexibility of what I was doing, even for other people. So it kind of, I was standing on that cliff and I just said, "Okay, I'm going to jump," and started the path of forming Three Leaf.
That's wild. It's so funny that you say I stood on the cliff and jumped. I always say the decisions I've made in my career often have been I was on the bridge, didn't know how much water was beneath me, but jumped nonetheless. And it's an interesting thing. So tell us, when you started your company, how old were your children?
Oh goodness. Three Leaf is now, I'm really bad at math. I said marketing, that's words, right?
So you started it in 1999, yes?
So that's when I started on the CRM path. I Three Leaf is coming up on 14 years in February. So my youngest is 14. How do we do that math?
He was just born.
Yeah, they were young. They were young. Yeah, I had, I think, late elementary school and early elementary school. So I still had momming to do, right?
So it's very interesting. So this whole thing kind of happened as a combination of both your skill sets, people knowing you wanting flexibility, and the understanding that in your dynamic and in your marriage and in your career life balance, integration. I don't like balance really because whatever. It was obvious that this was a right path. So it kind of like you went to the edge of the fork of the road, as they say, and you took a path. It turned out to be the right one. Now looking back, do you have any regrets?
Never. I don't know why I didn't do this initially. Right. I didn't have the confidence. I always thought the safety net was that consistent paycheck, right? That security if I worked for someone else. And that proved me wrong, right? And the security, I know what I can do. I know what the books look like. I know what we are capable of. Instead, I put it in someone else's hands and I mean, quite frankly, it failed me. And now it's my responsibility and I love it. I've made so many choices around what I want my life to look like and working the business into that life. And that's been the key for me. I think somebody said to me early on, one of the best pieces of business advice I got in the beginning of my career was, this sounds silly, but it leads into the life, the balance, that we don't like that word, but set up an office. I've worked from home since before it was a thing. I've always been a home-based office, but set up an actual office. In other words, don't work at the kitchen table so that you can close the door at the end of the day. I set up a lot of opportunities to close the door, but I still love the outlet of working and doing and things like that. So I set it up in a way that I can have that fun, right? My husband and I joke, I work for the fun department. I fund I fund the travel. I do that's the things. And that was kind of one of my missions early on, was I wanted to be able to do. When I worked for someone else, I spent so much time trying to prove my value that I worked all the time, all the time. Answering emails. They came in, I heard that ding, I had to answer it right away. And I don't do that working for myself.
That's good. It's funny that we talk about this because when 26 years ago when I started On Demand CMO, my husband had the corporate career. He was in marketing. He was CMO level, and during the course of his career in corporate advertising and marketing, losing accounts, mergers, acquisitions, et cetera, et cetera. He lost his corporate job 3 times over the course of a few years. He was supposed to be the steady paycheck.
Right.
So after the 3rd shot, I looked at him and I said, "At what point are you gonna realize there's no security in corporate America?" And he used to say, "Well, you eat what you kill, and if you don't kill, you don't eat," which is fine because it's on me, to your point. But there's no security there. There's no more security there than here,
Right. Absolutely.
other than paying a boatload of money for healthcare. Beyond that, I said, "Come work with me because I need you." And so that was 12 years ago. It'll be 12 years. And it's really helped the business a lot. So I bring that up because this is a shared conversation where the perception we have about security and a corporate gig is not really there.
It's not. And I think you're on this same page. You also have to know, can you work for yourself? Right? Like, because that is not everybody's strong suit. That dream of working for yourself may not work for every single person. But I agree. It took that, like you said, that instability to see you're in somebody else's hand and it's not always going to be the security you think it is. Yeah, it's this myth.
It is a myth. It is a total myth. What do you think holds women back from starting their own businesses? And what was I mean, we heard a little bit about your approach, though I could definitely have you elaborate on it a little bit. What do you think holds people back? Women specifically.
women specifically. Yeah, I think this this line that so many of us believe that there are so many barriers to getting into business for yourself. I also think a lot of us believe, that you can't have it all, that you have to choose, right? Do you want to be in business or do you want to be the good mom, the good wife that, that again, like I said about when I worked for someone else, I found I actually worked more. That whole belief that this is going to be all consuming, and that success looks like we said, that stability, that job, that title.
Yeah, the title is very big. You got ego and identity around that.
Yes, I have girlfriends that yay them, they're EVPs, they're very important. I never thank you. That's the thing that I
I'm
think
air
holds.
quoting people for those of you not watching us on YouTube. I'm air quoting.
Yes, 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 yes. And it is, I think it's a lot of that kind of the, again, use the myth word. It's the myth we're all sold, right? Like, one, it's going to be super hard. It is. It can be hard and isolating and all of that. But I think that line that we all believe that, that comes around the womanhood, right? I think holds us all back a lot.
It does. So what's your approach? You present yourself as a problem solver, which I totally get based on what you do for a living and what you're good at and your DNA and all that. And I should send you a why assessment. But and what do you attribute to your problem solving approach? What is it? Break it down for the audience.
It's an interesting question. One of my favorite clients, he came out of the Naval Academy, long Navy career, and now is helping with a family business. And he said, have you ever been tested to see if you're left right brain oriented? So we did a mini together. It was really fun. Yeah. And I'm a little bit of both, right? So I can right brain, left brain. So I approach it, things, a problem logically. I can pull out the bullet points, if you will, but then I also approach it creatively and look at it from a different perspective. And I think, the first time we met and chatted, I think one of the things that became clear is we both see that as consultants, we have this grace or perspective, if you will, of the client's so deep in the water of their problem, they can't even see the surface. We do have this different perspective of being at a higher level. We can see through the weeds, right? And pull that apart. So yeah, and I do approach it like a puzzle. I think people think they have this puzzle they need to put together, but they don't even know if they have the right pieces, or are there other puzzles mixed in with it? And, is there a better way to put the puzzle together?
Yes, that's such a good analogy. That's so good.
And I like the figuring out of it and then delivering the pretty little package of, you asked for this. What about that? And let's implement what we agree on. Does that make sense? And usually it does.
So it's not really what you asked for, it's what you need, but you didn't know you needed, which is my favorite. It's like, I never thought of it that way. That's my favorite line.
I love it too, right? I get a call for, let's say, training. I need training on how to do X, Y, or Z in Zoho, which is a product we sell. And it's like, wait, you don't need training. You actually need a new sales process, or, you need, and that's there. Wait a minute. Cause I do think a lot of consultants, I'm air quoting now too, they're just delivering the ask. And so many times, like you're saying, what they're asking for and they think they need isn't actually it. And to dig under that need is the key that they're looking for.
Definitely. And so that's awesome. What advice would you give? Let's say a younger person, and I'm not implying that both of us are old at all.
Not at all.
So I'm just not going to do that. But let's say there's a young woman that's listening and she's in her, late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, late 30s, whatever, and kind of had it with corporate America, or looking for a work-life integration. That was the word I was looking for before, integration. As I always say, I think you can't have it all at the same time. You can have it all, but different stages and places in your life, when you're heavy on the mommy, you're going to be light on the thing. And when you're heavy on the thing, you might be light on the. So anyway, there's ebbs and flows. Having said that, what would you say to a younger woman who is contemplating this going out on her own thing, but may not be pulling the trigger for whatever reason?
Yeah. And I think it goes back to that safety net security that we talked about first of all is really inventory. Is it really the security safety net that you think it is? Or are you just buying into that it is? And then, I do look at other people that have made the decision to go into their own business, become an entrepreneur, and they never spent the time to really assess, are they equipped? Not everyone, like I said earlier, I don't believe everyone is cut out to work for themselves necessarily. But then it's that I think of when we go to Maine in the summer and we go to this place called Peter's Pond, and I don't love heights, but dear God, is that jumping off the cliff thing fun? And there is that, yeah, that assessment of, do you just need to take the plunge and it is the right thing? But yeah, take a second to sort of acknowledge that you have the skill set of what you want to do. Because there's zero shame in working for someone else, right? There really isn't. If that's what you're fit to do and that's the right thing, that's great. Because there's no company without a person, right? And then if you have a passion for something and you have the expertise, that's kind of the thing to really, I think, to evaluate is, do you have the expertise? Can you execute it? And do you have a plan? And know yourself, right?
That's true. Did you ever read The Great Game of Business, the book?
I'm ashamed to say I have not.
No, that's okay. It's not a big deal. But here's what The Great Game of Business is a good book because it basically speaks to what you're talking about. And at the same time says, just because you love to bake or you're a phenomenal baker doesn't mean that you should own a bakery. Just because you're a phenomenal painter and you love to paint doesn't mean you should be a gallery owner, and so on and so on and so on. So, I think bringing that down, you have to do the inventory of what your skills are. And if you should be looking at a partnership that gives you the skill sets that you don't have. But if you don't know what your skill sets are clearly and definitively, it's really hard to build a business.
Correct. And I think, like you said, that dawned on me to be a good piece of advice that just happened based on what I did when I got that layoff call was I validated with other people that I could do it. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but I was talking to other people that know what I am capable and not,
Right.
and they did validate it. So not only kind of self-assess, but yeah, ask, do you think I can? And be open to the real.
Good one. Really good one. My path was I worked for an asshole and I couldn't take it anymore. And before I left, I had 2 clients that wanted to work with me. So I had that safety net validation, whatever we wanna call it, that there were other people in the world that wanted to work with me on a consulting basis.
Yes.
So if these 2 wanna work with me and I haven't even left yet and I haven't even put out a shingle, there might be others.
Correct.
So that's kind of the stepping off point. So those of you who are listening, contemplating, look deep inside yourself, understand whether or not you have the gene that says, I'm willing to take a risk on myself. I'm willing to bet on myself. And if you have a little bit of imposter syndrome, you've heard me say this a million times, people, it's good. If you don't have a little bit of imposter syndrome, you're not pushing yourself, you're not learning, you're not stretching, you're never going to move in the direction of growth. You have to have a little bit of discomfort.
Absolutely.
There you go. Validated by yet another human who's successful and has her own business. There you go. So, so this risk, this betting on yourself, you created something out of nothing. And how did it impact your family?
For the most part, it was for the better. I really took a step back after that day that felt like a week and said, how much am I working? How much, that Jetsons treadmill was I on all the time? And I took the first 2 months. It happened to roll into summer very quickly. And I said, okay, summertime, I am taking this and I'm really gonna, what are the things of working for a small business that, what are the advantages that I was sold that I don't take advantage of? one of my employers, instead of giving me, I too worked for an asshole. That's a whole nother episode. But instead of a raise, gave me Fridays off. Ask me how many Fridays I took off.
Well, that's your fault.
Oh, own it. Own it. That was such, like woman guilt. Well, I can't. There are things to do. I got to get the things done. Well, guess what? The first year working for myself, I took the Fridays off. Yeah. So I did the things, right? So that was a really nice impact. I remember my youngest, again, probably elementary school at the time, Cullen said, "Hey, mommy, can I just skip summer camp this year? And can I just have camp mommy?" I'm like, "Yeah, what does that mean, bud?" He's like, "Can we maybe like at lunchtime go to the pool? And then if it's rainy, can we watch a movie?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, dude, we can do that." I've been able to do that all along, but I felt I didn't have the permission. I gave myself the permission to do it.
Oh my God, that's so cute.
Yeah, I went on the field trips because who was I guilty for not doing it for? Me. And yeah, sometimes I can be the meanest boss for myself, but yeah, so impact for the family, absolutely. And that that security, the paycheck, I make more for myself than I ever did. So again, my husband and I joke, he's the big bucks, but I'm the travel fund department. The trips, the God, that feels good. And I'm just overall happier reporting to me than I am some dickhead that, is just using me to fund what they want to do.
Or it is. Yeah, I think, well, I'm not sure that the asshole episode needs to be separated because I think that the asshole component of our lives, especially as women, that is the impetus for change. And I think that, I mean, we all know the research. We're not going to make inertia is a powerful force. We're not going to make the change until the pain outweighs the risk.
Absolutely.
And so when the pain gets to be too much and it's your boss is oppressive or a micromanager, or you're spending 3 hours in the car every day getting to and from your job and you never see your kids, fill in the blanks. You're going to make the change. If it's all working and you have hand in the matter and you can say, I'm going to do this and I want to do that and I don't want to do this. And I just, one of my community members works for an organization. She's part of a team, but she's got 3 tons more work than her coworker on the same level. And I said to her, I said, why are you allowing that?
Yeah, and I have a couple of women, that do similar to what I do that have reached out and looking for mentorship and similar stories, right? I do this, I do that. Well, why?
Here's the thing. If your coworker is making the same amount of money as you and doing 1/3 the work, shame on you.
And I do think again that that's something that we as women are starting to break out of, which I think is great. But well, the man in my same position makes more. Well, have you asked for more? Setting yourself up to be, bold enough, empowered enough to say, have you asked? Just asked. Here's what I'm worth. Because if you're not asking, you kind of have to look at, do you not believe you're worth that? And, I think you and I talked the first time we met. I know for a fact I am more expensive than most people in my industry because I'm worth it. I have the experience, I have the expertise. You know, I don't have that disparity of male female. I don't allow myself to believe it's necessary. Yeah, and I believe my worth.
Right. Yeah, no, I think Sarah Dale was on the podcast, and she used to run large organization for Wall Street Journal. She was the chief revenue officer there, sales revenue officer, and she said point blank that even anecdotally, the research was paid out. Women would ask for raises half as many times, 30% less. Every time somebody had a baby that was a man, the wife had the baby, obviously, he would go in for a raise. Every time a woman would have a child, she would be thankful that we held her job. So that was kind of her anecdotal, summary of her experience there for a decade. And I thought, wow, there we still have a lot to learn and a lot to implement.
We do. And I like the don't just accept that it is, like you said, kind of shame on you for not pushing it. And I don't mean that shame on us as women by any means, but just believe you can go and ask.
So I tell my kids, what's the worst that can happen? You don't ask, you don't get. So out of the gate, you're nowhere worse off than you were before you asked. And if anything, after your ask, they now know they're on notice. They're going to hear from you again.
And it's part of the thing you learn real quick in sales is you got to hear no. I don't know what the official number is. You get real okay with hearing no. But the scariest thing is the asking. But once you ask and you get a no a couple times and you live through it, okay, great. It was a no. Who cares?
You know what? Water off a duck's ass after a while. Otherwise, you just can't. You definitely can't be in sales if you can't take the word no. So here's my question: what was the best career advice you ever got?
The first one was probably the first phone call I made begging for a job after I got laid off. And this is a dear friend. He literally just said, "Stop crying and just do it. You're capable of just doing it." But then truly the next best was another woman entrepreneur was the thing that I mentioned a little bit earlier was set up an actual office and close the door at the end of the day because it is so easy to get sucked into the business 24/7 and that physical having to go and reopen the door to get to the computer was huge for me because it kind of makes your brain look at the do I really want to go back in and log in or do I want to go sit on the sofa in front of the fire with the kids and watch a movie at 8 o'clock at night, right? So that was a big one. Close the door. Allow yourself that work to stop.
Good. And what about the worst career advice you ever gave?
Worst career advice was somebody I worked for early on, and he said, always say yes and figure it out later. And in sales, I think that is one of the worst things you can do. I would rather, which, that I did with you is you don't need me. Be okay with saying I'm not a fit. Yeah. So no, don't just always say yes and then think you can figure it out. Again, know what you're good at and be okay with saying I'm not your girl. I don't know if you remember the movie or Miracle on 34th
Oh
Street.
my God, it was irregular. My kids will tell you now that they have PTSD every year and we wait to watch it. Yes.
So it is one of my favorite sales philosophies ever. I took your what's the worst and I'll spin it back to that's probably one of my best is I have built my career of sales on being the Santa that tells you if I'm not the Santa that can give it to you, if Macy's isn't it, where to go and find it, right? Knowing that about yourself. Yeah, don't just always say yes because you need the paycheck. It's be integrous and stick to what you can deliver.
I love that. Stay in your swim lane, and it's okay to not be a fit, and it's okay for people not to like you.
Whether it's a woo-woo way or not, that business karma comes back around. Somebody's gonna remember that you took good care of them, and it comes back around.
I have a lot of stories about that. I remember telling a CEO of a bank that asked for an RFP for a rebrand in the middle of the RFP presentation, and I said to him point blank, "You don't need a rebrand, and I'm gonna tell you why." And we left, and he called me 3 months later. Actually, he called me a week later and said, "I wanna have breakfast because I really wanna talk to you." And then 3 months later, we were on retainer, and 2 years later, we were doing his rebrand.
I love it, right? It's empowering for the prospect, the client, or it's why you and I are talking, right? You didn't need me.
Right, and I so appreciated the fact that you said it, even though I came to that conclusion pretty early on in the conversation, but you affirming it as the person responsible for selling me, quote, air quotes again, people, was amazing. It was amazing. So anyway, so my last question is always one of my favorites, and that is, you get to talk to your 30-year-old self. What do you say to her?
It's gonna sound corny and hokey, but the do it for you, right? Like it's the jump off that cliff and trust what you know. Yeah, cuz it's so much better than doing it for somebody else. That whole like you said that's scary. Once you jump off that cliff, it's so exhilarating. And yeah, I never would have believed at 30 that I'd have my own company and, have people that rely on me to do work and clients paying the money to me. It was always going to be doing for someone else. Yeah. And it's so fulfilling. Yeah, I just that you're so capable and you don't have to do it to please someone else. And being that integral cog isn't what it's all about.
Yay! That was refreshing and honest and earnest and all those good things. Thank you, Michelle Scott, so very much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. This is really fun.
It was really, really fun. For those of you listening or watching, we would love to get some ideas as to what resonated with you. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what you were stuck on. Tell us what you disagreed with. We want to hear from you. And for God's sakes, press the subscribe button, would you? Thank you, possibility seekers. Make it a great day. Thank you so much for listening to Possibilities with Monique de Maio, where we unpack life as a female mover and shaker. If you like the show, please consider liking it, or better still, subscribing to it and leaving us a rating. It truly does help. Also, you can pick up my book, The 7 Secrets to Creating a Life You Love, a practical guide for women in leadership. You can find the book, other episodes of this podcast, and how to stay in touch at moniquedemaio.com. DEMAIO. I look forward to seeing you again soon. With gratitude, Monique.